And we're live. Welcome back. Welcome to the After Dram. Welcome to the viewer. Welcome to our fantastic panel. It is the After Dram, and that means it is time to unwind. So put your feet up, grab a cocktail, and maybe a scotch or a cocktail or two, either one, and relax. No, not a scotch, whiskey. What are we talking about? Grab your single malt or your rye, God's sakes. As a quick recap to our evening, Dave, Blair, Davin, and I have been treated to a tour of Barry's distillery, Still Waters Distillery in Concord, Ontario. We're all now sitting together enjoying a much anticipated beverage. Distillery tours, their hard work, all these questions, all these answers. But let's do another round of introductions if we could, and tell people what you have in your glasses. And we'll do the same order if we could. We'll do Davin, Blair, Barry, Dave, and we'll end with me if that's all right. Davin.
Hi, I'm Davin de Kergommeaux. This is Whisky Book Club, and this is the book that we're reading this week, The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries. Blair Phillips and I wrote it. Talks about 200 distilleries have profiles, 257 all in all, across Canada with maps, how to get there and so on. And I am drinking a rye and ginger. It's made with Still Waters that is going to be strong, 100% rye. I've used Fever Tree ginger beer, and I've got some of these toasty cherries, which I've put in there. So, cheers.
Jesus.
What do you make again? What's it called?
Rye and ginger.
That's it? All right. Sorry. Blair, she's laughing really loud at me.
Yep. Co-author of the Canadian Guide to Canadian Distilleries. I am having just a basic, just 3-barrel whiskey with some soda water, and I've garnished with a bit more whiskey.
Nice. Beautiful. No better garnish. And Dave, you're up. No.
All right.
I'm still up.
It's Barry.
There's Barry.
Barry Bernstein, co-founder of Still Waters Distillery in the Toronto area, and I am enjoying a 3-barrel stock and barrel neat.
And let's finish it off with you, Dave.
Hey, it's Yukon Dave again in the basement. I seem to have screwed this up, and I drank the sample I'm supposed to be talking about, so I went back to where I started. and I will catch up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gunster. And I'm Dolph. I'm the president of the Alberta Scotch Society. I'm the founder of the Whisky Book Club and the After Dram, and I'm your host tonight. And I'm drinking several things. So let's start with the 3-barrel whiskey. And I was talking to Barry and Davin and Blair earlier, and I said there's a scent in here I could not pick up. I did. The scent is of bubblegum cards. You used to get a piece of gum in hockey cards. That is the finish I'm getting on the nose with the 3-barrel whiskey, and I love it. But I couldn't figure it out before, and I think I've nailed it. And I might be wrong. And Barry, you can tell me if I'm full of whatever, but I think that's what it is. Now, the cocktail I have is
hockey cards.
Yeah. And
hockey cards.
We're all Canadian. We've had the hockey cards with a piece of gum. So that lasts probably 30 seconds in your mouth before it becomes rock hard. Yeah. And if you dropped it, it turned out like all these pieces.
It shatters.
It's called a Boulevardier. And I had a friend that just came back from the Banff Springs Hotel. Talked to him today as I was making my hand sanitizer for the first time. And he told me it's 1 ounce Campari, 1 ounce Aperol, and 1 ounce of the 3-barrel whiskey. So that's what I tried, and a little sprig of mint in there, and it looks pretty good. It's pretty, very refreshing. The problem is these go down very quickly in the after dram, so they do. And then my wife gives me hers as a prop, and I start drinking her prop, and she gets mad at me. Let's get back to the questions, if we may. This was the only question I actually missed from our last one, and it was about rye. So this is right for you, Barry. I love your single barrel rye. So this one right here. the cast strength single barrel rye. So thank you very much for making it. I really appreciate it. I've read a few things on your rye production. Davin says you've got a great story about making the rye, but I'm going to go back to a YouTube video that you had Ralphie on, or sorry, Ralphie had you, or Ralphie came to Canada and you were on it. And
wow,
you talked about your rye, or you at that point, your rye was 95% rye, 5% barley in the mash bill. You since then changed it to 100% rye. And here I've got a picture of both ryes too, if we can get that. And I'm wondering why. So there's the 46%, and there's our barrel 100. So could you tell us why you went to the 100% rye and why?
Yeah. We actually didn't make very much rye that had the malt in it, the malted rye. When we first started making the rye, we couldn't find malted rye. So for the first couple of months, we used 95% rye grain, 5% malted barley. And then we're able to source the malted rye and switch to that. So it was only for a few months.
So it was just for ease. It didn't taste any better. It was the ease of it, and the taste comparison between them was negligible.
Yeah, honestly, I can't tell any difference.
Okay. Good stuff. And well, I like it a lot. And Dave, you said there was some questions from the Whisky Book Club about the rye. Do you still have those? Yeah,
there's some it was Whiskey asked, is the rye at 62% different than the 46% green label? So is it basically cask that's watered down, or is it different?
Blending.
No, it's just the proofing. So
just proofed. Okay.
More water.
Okay,
yep.
Good. And I'll go back to this. I think you've already answered. I know you've answered this question. So you're using malted rye now versus unmalted before?
Yeah, it's 95% rye, 5% malted rye.
Okay, so do you cook it?
5% barley, it's now 5% malted rye.
Correct.
So is there a cooking process going with the unmalted rye? Or is it, you get the enzymes you need out of the malted rye?
Yep, that 5% malted rye gives us those enzymes.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
I got some education today. Great.
And well, we get it every day. And Davin said that you had a really interesting story about the first time that you distilled the rye. If you could please enlighten.
Yeah. So, yeah, up to that point, we had only worked with the malted barley. So, we just had a standard way of we would mash the barley, put the yeast in, whatever. It was a standard process. So we thought, okay, not really knowing, and we're not brewers, so we thought, okay, let's just try doing the same thing with the rye. So there we go. We mash it. We, pitch our yeast, put it into the fermenter, leave for the evening. So I typically get in, actually in those days, about 2 hours before Barry Steam. So I was in at about 7 a.m. in the morning, and I opened the door and was greeted to the most wonderful smell ever. It was just fantastic. It was just strong rye. And of course, when I opened the second door to look into the main distillery area, it looked a lot different than the way I had left it the evening before. The walls, the ceiling, the floors, the equipment, everything was covered in this and covered in rye. It took us weeks.
Daniel.
Yeah, was to Barry to wake him up, saying, "You better get in here."
Good.
So obviously you didn't use any rice hulls in your production.
No, and you know what? We still don't. So
okay.
Yeah. So what we actually do now is we time it so that we actually split it between two fermenters, and we actually have an overflow system. So we really haven't changed our technique at all, other than to compensate for that incredible activity, that foaminess. And then when it comes to distilling, we also learned the hard way that you have to distill smaller quantities of rye in the still because it foams. It foams everywhere.
Okay.
Well, we've had some distillers say they'll never do rye again.
Yeah.
And I've got one of their bottles in my, yeah.
Oh.
Well,
And
thank goodness these guys persevered, because their rye kind of opened my eyes to what rye could be, because it doesn't taste like we think of when we think of like Rittenhouse 100 or something like that. This rye has some really unique characters. It's creaminess, but it's more like lemon curd or something like that. There's some real citrus notes in this.
Ooh.
I think it's really. I think that rye could be the next big grain, because it's like malted barley. It's like single malt whiskey. The range of flavors is just phenomenal. And these guys were the first guys who made rye that was great and didn't taste like American rye.
Okay. And the range of flavors that you're talking about, I agree with that, Davin, but that's only a recent development with that range. Before that, like you said, it was very narrow. But
yes,
I would love rye anyway, so I was okay with that. But now with the different ryes, and I love this, and this was one of my ryes that I bought apart from the Americans that I traditionally went with, or our Alberta rye. And yeah, love it. Love it, love it. And this probably my third bottle. And Barry did give us this bottle for the group. So this is my
Thank you, Barry.
I bought 3, but thank you for this. And that's the one Dave and the people commenting on the sides drinking this tonight.
Yeah, mine's almost gone. It disappeared all of a sudden.
I don't have any left. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I love American rye as well, and I would have been happiest if that was the only thing that people ever made out of rye. But then Barry came along, and they made something. I thought, holy crow, I've really been limiting myself, because this stuff is just, it's something, it's phenomenal. And I thought, you know what, Isla doesn't taste like Speyside. Why should Ontario rye taste like rye that's made in Kentucky or something like that? And honestly, I think, and then Millstones come out with new rye that it's a whole new thing altogether.
That Millstone 100 is like a lot.
So anyway, Barry, thank you very much for expanding my narrow-minded beliefs of what rye should taste like.
Blair, are you a rye fan? We haven't talked about this. You love the single malts. You like the cocktails. Is rye more of a cocktail drink for you or a straight drink?
It's both, actually.
Okay.
No, I because of this book, I'm gonna say about 99% of the spirits I get to drink now are all Canadian, and because Still Waters is kind of in my backyard, I get to have a lot of their stuff.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Barry, is rye still about 50% of your production?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about the vodka? Because I think at first the vodka was everything, and then at what point did the rye and the single malt pass the vodka? Like, when was that point for you?
When we decided, I can't remember what it was, a year or two in, to experiment with other grains, because at that point we were only using malted barley. We brought in some local rye, corn, and some wheat.
Okay.
It was really at that moment. So the first new make rye we tried, we fell in love with it, and we made the decision on the spot to switch half our production to rye without knowing what would come out eventually in 3 years, but we were still taken with that movement.
And
so, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Quick
please.
question.
Yeah.
So, is rye more economical than malt, or is it just a preference for you?
It's both. It's definitely a preference. The grain itself cost about half as much as
half as much.
Yeah, it's about half as much
Wow.
as the barley. Now it takes us. It takes us a little bit longer to make because we distill with smaller charges because of the foaming. So, if that's factored in, it's not quite half the cost, but it's still more economical.
Barry,
Yeah.
I've seen pictures with foaming, though. They have blades cutting the foam. Do you have anything like that, or is that something you would consider?
No.
No. All right.
I mean, at this point, we know how to do it, and we probably won't mess with our process.
Okay.
Something's working.
Stick with what you know. Good.
Yeah.
Blair and Davin, I have a question. So these are the questions I had for the After Dram to start with. We talked about, and I don't know if you guys said this, but I think I did. 40 Creek was the first Ontario craft distiller. So first of all, do we make a difference between craft distiller and a micro distiller? Like, is there a differentiation in our minds with that I should kind of click onto? Because I think I was using them interchangeably.
Well, personally, I don't see the difference. I prefer micro distillery over a craft distillery.
And was Lot 40 a craft distillery and before Still Waters then? And
well,
I'm wondering if we said
so. John, yeah, we talked about this a little bit, but John Hall or took over Reader Distillery, and whether or not you want to call it a micro distillery or craft distillery is kind of, it doesn't really matter anymore, because 40 Creek really quickly grew out of becoming, like, they grew out of becoming a micro distillery into a full-fledged one of the big 8 distilleries
pretty quick.
So I think it's more fair to say that Still Waters is the first Ontario craft distillery or micro distillery, however you want to word it.
Okay.
And whether you want to start talking about Readers and 40 Creek is kind of semantics at that point.
Semantics, but Lot 40 is not craft whiskey.
No.
It's made in a massive still,
Yeah.
and it's production. It's beautifully well crafted. I don't know. I kind of had a bit of a revolution against the word craft in Canada, because there were some people who were talking, and it was the people in Ontario talking about this wonderful craft whiskey or craft spirits that honestly were not really very good, and it was kind of embarrassing to say this was craft. And so, I remember I wrote a story once and about how people should wait until they're craftsmen before they start calling their whiskey craft.
Yeah.
And let's call them micro distilleries. That's what they are. They're small distilleries, and gotten into some rather unpleasant exchanges with certain people, but not with others. But by and large, people adopted the term craft whiskey, because at that time, I think my newsletter was about the only one going out. And I think they didn't want to be dissed. So, but I prefer micro distillery. It defines a smaller distillery, and Blair is absolutely right. It's semantics. There's absolutely no question. Reader started in 1972, was a craft distillery because it was a craft, and Otto Reader came from Austria, and he was crafting these wonderful eau de vies and things like that. But it was a micro distillery in terms of what we see now. The stills were very small, and it was done everything was done in small batches. I think that Still Waters, without the question, and with full regard to what I've just said, they kicked off the craft distilling movement in Canada. Okay, because they were the first ones who really stood up to the plate and did it, and they weren't just, they were really serious. This is a business, and they pulled it off. So I really have no problems with saying that. Although others may have had their license before Still Waters, or they may not have, or they may have been distilling in their basement without telling anybody, but or whatever. Yeah, it's like they said in Alberta. What happened when they made micro distilling legal in Alberta? People put signs on the distilleries they had already been operating for several years.
We're now a distiller. Dave, you had a question.
I got a comment, and I think it's something that Davin wrote many years ago in one of the whiskey magazines, and it hit home. It says, just because I bought a still doesn't mean I'm a craft distiller.
Oh boy, yeah.
That's
all very true.
All it says is that I'm a small distiller, and the word craft, when I do seminars with people, we are a small distillery. We haven't learned the craft yet. So, and
Well,
Barry said it, but Barry said it. Barry answered the question earlier. He said, "What we're doing today is not what we started with."
Yeah.
So we've learned over the years. So my question to the public is, so how do you buy a still today and become a craft distiller tomorrow?
Yeah,
a lot of hand sanitizer and a lot of honest people telling you how bad your hand sanitizer smells.
But you take hand sanitizer out of the question. This is a sore spot with me. You can buy a still and be a craft distiller the day after you buy it.
Well, you come to my place, we'll make some hand sanitizer and we'll talk about us being distillers, and I'll call myself craft and you can know it. And Barry, here's a question. Here's you, two good-looking fellas there, and this is the Ottawa Whiskey Show. And at the Ottawa Whiskey Show, on that one, you had I don't know if we could call it tasting notes on one of those kind of pamphlets, but on that pamphlet, you referred to yourselves as micro distillery, craft distiller, artisan distiller. Is there a difference, or is it just semantics? And if there is, tell us which one you are. Which one do you like the best? How's that? What's your favorite?
I like micro distiller. It's the term I use to describe.
I love it. Yeah.
The only problem is right now the consumer has been trained to think about craft, so and associate craft with small and local. The LCBO talks about craft. So we sometimes talk about craft so that people understand what we are. But when I'm talking one-on-one to somebody and they say, "Well, what do you do?" I say, "Well, I own a craft. I own a
micro distiller." It might have to do with the craft beer craze as well, and I don't know if it's hidden apex or not, but it seems quite important.
Yeah,
Tell me, do you taste or do you smell the bubble gum I'm referring to on the 3-barrel whiskey?
Now that you pointed out, I do.
Okay. I do that to friends as well. I smell marshmallow. I get it. Yes. No, but I truly do smell. Blair, Davin, Dave, either of you get the bubble gum? Hopefully you guys talking.
I get hints of amarula. Do you find that?
What's amarula? Help me
out. That's good. I like amarula. Yeah. So with a chocolate cup, you're talking Christmas.
Okay. All right. Well,
it's almost like to me, almost like it's like a bit of a creamsicle note to it too.
It's got a creamy note for sure.
And my wife's.
I get a lot of malt in this.
I do get the malt, but it's at the very end on kind of the tip of my nose as I'm finishing my nosing. That's what came out. And I had the hardest time, and I've been doing it for probably about a week and a half, trying to figure out what that note is, and it drives me quite insane. It's funny that it came out just as I opened it for the first time tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's a pretty short drive though, Dolph.
Yes.
I really like how it starts and then that I get kind of almost a brown sugar kind of a finish on it. So yeah,
okay.
it's nice.
Right at the end. Yeah. We're good. Barry, you did 20,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. So let's go through all the pictures of hand sanitizer I've got. So we got that one. I took all these from your own Instagram account. Okay. So I'm not stealing it from anyone. That's all good. That one, the Everyday Heroes, and there's another one. Mm-hmm. So is that is that Barry's son?
No, it's not Barry's son, but
that's not Daniel. Okay.
No, that's who he works for. York Region Paramedic.
Got it. No. Okay. Because you said that was them. So let's get this picture off. Let's get back on us. And I got another picture of you. Actually, I've got a picture of you in Texas. So let's put that Texas picture up. And that's not you.
That's not Barry. No.
Stock and Barrel in Texas. So not Barry, but Stock and Barrel in Texas. How long have you guys been in the States? And was Texas your first? And how many different states do you sell in?
We've actually been in the States for a number of years.
Okay.
We were, off and on in about 15 different states.
Ooh,
and,
that's good.
But fairly small, scattered here and there. And we decided that we wanted to do it properly, and to build the brand, we really needed to concentrate in one market. So we pulled back and reintroduced in Texas last year, or actually beginning of 2020, end of 2019. Although we might be able to find this in some other places, Texas is really at the moment where we're concentrating.
Okay. You seem to like us in Texas.
Yeah, because I've seen you in San Francisco, but that goes back a ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and in New York and
go ahead, Davin.
Yeah, in New York as well. I remember going to Benny's in Chicago when they closed the store because it was we were judging the World Whiskey Awards, and Benny's had a big tasting where they were using. There was a shelf of Still Waters bottles. Honest goodness, you must have had like 25 facings.
Wow.
And everyone was different. Yeah. It was honest. I thought, holy crow, like this is a really prominent liquor store in all of, in America for sure, but in North America. And they've given over like the whole top shelf of one rank to Still Waters. Yeah. And it was deep too. So yeah, you guys, I run into you guys in good liquor stores.
Nice. That's good. So, it's good liquor. That's good.
Pardon me?
Is this an okay time to talk about online sales?
Why not?
I am just confused because I asked, I only have two questions I ask. You already answered one of them earlier. But online sales, some of the guys said, yeah, we sell across Canada. And other guys say, yeah, we only sell into certain provinces. And I can't figure out what the law actually tells us you can do. Because you do Canada Post. Yeah. So do you sell across Canada or do you sell into certain provinces?
Up until very recently, we were only shipping to Ontario addresses.
Oh,
we will ship across the country, although we haven't really advertised that. So I don't think we've done it yet. Our online sales are fairly small. I still don't think that a lot of people are comfortable buying alcohol online.
Oh, I am.
Well, I think it depends where you live, right? If you live north of Timmins, online sales are probably pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably
true. If you live somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sorry. Jesus.
You're a popular guy, Dave.
If that's my wife, I'm at the office.
That's right.
Yeah, no, he's working as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
Going back to
I look at that all the time. I can't figure out what's going on with online sales because the Alberta guys are doing it. The BC guys are doing it. Manitoba. Ontario says, yeah, we ship all across Canada. Some guys say we only ship in parts of Canada. And for me, it doesn't matter, but it's one of those puzzles that I can't leave alone.
And the funniest part is we're with someone on an interview and Dave's usually on the sideline and we talk about the online sales and Dave usually types, is that legal? And he wants me to ask the question. But I don't want to ask the question I don't want to put someone on the spot. So Dave, thank you for not asking if that's legal this time. I appreciate it, buddy. Barry, I'm assuming if you're going through Canada Post, and I've gotten things through Canada Post as well from across the country, but I have to sign for it. So that's all.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons we use Canada Post, because they have a 19 years or older service.
It works well.
Yeah.
So I think that's perfect. And if some province went to 21-year-old, it would be a 21-year-old service. So it works well. But I'm going to go back. No,
okay, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
All right.
I'll let that one slide.
I wanted to go back to this one. I wanted to go back to this show with these gentlemen And I was going to ask 3 questions. How many whiskey shows do you traditionally do per year? How many do one or both of you attend if you're not presenting? Or do you like presenting, or do you like doing master classes as well? And the third question is, what makes a whiskey show like that successful? Is it just sales after? Is it the people that you meet? So like that. So why do you do it?
Yeah. We don't do as many shows as we used to. We used to do all sorts of food and drink shows, and learned over the years really that it's the whiskey shows that are the important ones where people really learn. So what makes it a good show for us is being able to talk to people when they ask questions and they're really curious about learning, which is true of most of the real whiskey shows.
Yeah.
We don't, so if you look at how many there are, there's not all that many. We do maybe right now half a dozen, although, the couple most recent ones obviously were canceled because of COVID. So,
Yeah.
All right. And what makes one successful for you? Because this is an interesting one, because people send their representatives, the brand ambassadors, to all the whiskey shows, and it's to get your name out there. But as an owner, because you don't see too many owners at the larger whiskey shows, and you do it at some, like if you go to BC, you're going to see some. Yeah. But to see you and Barry both at that one in Ottawa, and you're not from Ottawa, it's 4 hours away. So you went there. What are you trying to get out of it? What makes it a good time for you and a good investment?
Yeah, I mean, you never see it translate into direct sales. So, I mean, what makes it a good show is do we get a chance to really talk to people and engage people?
Yeah. Okay. 100%. You never see the figures go up by. Your sales don't double the next week.
No.
Any show you do, but if you're talking to interesting people, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, it amazes us now because we've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I'm terrible with names and faces, but it amazes me when you go to shows. How many people come up to us and say, "Barry, good to see you again."
We're on a first name basis. Davin. Same question to you, because you've been to a lot of shows, and the first time I ever met you was at the Banff Whiskey Experience last year. What makes a good show for you? What makes it all worthwhile, successful?
Number one, they control the drunks.
Oh, okay.
I cannot stand having drunks at a whiskey show. So when they escort them out, that makes it a good show for me. A good show for me is when I get to talk to people. Oh, there we are. When I get to talk to people, when I get to present, good brands, especially brands that may not have their own ambassadors there. When I get to tell the real story of the whiskey, when I can show whiskeys from a number of different distilleries, because you can't talk about Canadian whiskey. You can't even pretend to be talking about Canadian whiskey if you've only got one brand in front of you. And I like that, being able to engage people and being able to talk. And it's really interesting. And I have to go back to that Cornwall show that we did together, Barry. I sent a note to Barry. It can't be more than 2 weeks before the show. I said, I'm doing a master class. And it just occurred to me, it's kind of fun if you join me. And he said, oh yeah, sure. I'll bring Barry too. And remember how much fun that was?
It was.
We really enjoyed ourselves. And it's really good. And I think what you do at those shows is you give a certain legitimacy to Canadian whiskey and to the whiskeys that you're pouring. So it's really good for me. And it's important that you pour good stuff and you pour a range, that you disabuse people of their preconceptions about Canadian whiskey, especially in the States. I love doing shows in the States because people are just gobsmacked when they taste some of these Canadian whiskeys. They don't believe that it's Canadian whiskey. My favorite trick is to pour the whiskey without telling them what it is and say, what do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you score that? Mm-hmm. And if they know it's Canadian, it's a 7, 8. If they don't know it's Canadian, it's 8, 9. somewhere around there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's it's fun.
Okay, good.
Preconceived notions.
funny.
Yeah.
Barry,
Go
you
ahead,
said
Blair.
you scaled back the sales in the States. Was that because of Gary? Actually, and a second question with it, he's related to Dylan's, and Dylan's is through the States as well, correct?
Yeah.
So did he have kind of an idea as to where to start and what to do? Is that more his vision that kind of came to fruition?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. And where's your next one after Texas?
Probably branching out from that area. So I think Oklahoma.
Wow.
People are importers based down in Texas.
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, it's definitely been a bit of a setback with COVID over the past few months. So.
But you're thinking of staying in the South? They're big whiskey drinkers in the South compared to the rest of the country?
Texas is huge.
I don't know.
Texas is a huge market for Canadian whiskey.
Nice. Blair, my wife said I cut you off. What were you saying?
No,
Dad
you
was talking-
did cut him off.
Yes.
Now Dave says
Yes.
it. I'm sorry, Blair.
No, I just want to make the comment that Davin was talking about whiskey shows, and that's the problem I have is every time I go to a whiskey show, I end up being escorted out about 5 minutes into it.
And you're just there for a good time, Blair.
Yeah,
I don't understand why they're so mean to you.
that would have worked better 5 minutes ago, but whatever.
Well,
That's only happened a couple of dozen times, Blair. Come on.
Oh, I know.
That's
Yeah.
that-
I've only been to about half a dozen whiskey shows, so there you go.
I tried to get into the San Francisco whiskey show a year ago, and they said, "Yeah, it's only $3,000 US to get in here."
Oh, yeah.
That sucked all the fun out of the show for me. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure you would have had fun regardless there, Dave, but I do agree. When you're paying that amount of money, you're paying, I don't know, you're buying your way into it. Although it is a business and you're going to sell.
Well, they said you can't get big unless you do our show. I said we can't get big. We're not that whiskey company.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I went to the first World of Whiskey show in San Francisco. Everybody was there. The food they served was so spicy you couldn't taste the whiskey. It was insanity.
I love
Maybe
San
they did
Francisco.
that like salt on popcorn just so you drink more type thing. They make it spicy. You've got to take more.
Yeah, well, were they selling Rolling Rock there?
Cast strength.
No,
Yeah.
Isn't that great? You should love that, Dave. It's good stuff. All right, I got another quote, guys. In a quote on your online, because Davin and Blair actually tell me about your online definitive guide to Canadian distilleries, because you've got the book, but you have all these articles on different distilleries in quite a bit more detail. So it could be a page, could be 2 pages. And I don't know if people know about those. And I've linked it to the bottom. And for the past 3 different distilleries, I found information on them that I've gotten online. So tell me about that.
Well, we've started. We haven't been very active yet. We're still trying to find a groove to get into this. But yeah, we want to review as many whiskeys, as many spirits as physically possible, and that's our end goal. Right now, we're not really overachieving on that. But for instance, we did do just a 1-page review on this guy right here, like the 3-barrel whiskey.
Yep.
And we just like to talk about the story behind the whiskey, kind of a high level overview of what it tastes like, and have fun with it. And that's the main goal.
What I thought was, I thought these might have been stories that didn't make it in the book because you're condensing the book more, and you had to take them out, and you just needed a forum to actually, because you wrote it, and that was what was coming to mind.
No, it's all brand new, fresh content. This stuff wasn't on the cutting floor. We're just having fun with it and just trying to catch up, because there's a lot of spirits that we never got a chance to cover in the book. There's thousands actually, so we want to try to build up that library on the website.
Now, is it linked to CanadianDistilleries.com? Because I just did a search. I did a search, Blair and Still Waters. I do a search, Davin, Still Waters, to see if is it in the CanadianDistilleries.com? Is that linked?
That's well, it depends what you found.
Well, the article you just talked about, I found that.
Yeah, that's definitely CanadianDistilleries.com.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to my original question, because I'm like a little dog and I see something and I just change. Here's my quote again. And it's from the Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries, the online one. We learned that 3-barrel whiskey is your latest release. Blair just talked about it. Though it's not intended as a 10th anniversary bottling. Oh, I'm going to go to... I'm not sure what happened today.
Might want to call Daniel, the paramedic, to get more.
All right.
Nothing.
I think the problem with the headphones, and we're going to let them get that organized. It might be a headphone problem. So let's go back.
Headphone problem.
Yeah, we all know what that's like, right, Davin? We're all good. So your 3 barrels, they said, is not a 10th anniversary bottling. We're sipping it in celebration of that milestone tonight, let's say. Will you have another bottle to mark the 10th anniversary? Maybe
No.
the 10-year-old in front of you?
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus.
You know
my
what?
God.
we talked about it, and to be honest with you, we were so overwhelmed, we were so busy, we just never got around to putting a special 10th anniversary edition of something together.
Okay, you still have time.
Yeah, no, well, it would at this point, if we try to work on something, it would probably be for our 12th anniversary.
Okay.
Well, nobody else has done that, so you're the first.
Yeah.
It's a 12 and a half anniversary.
So, I mean, I want to see this bottled for sure. We only have 2 casks that are over 10 years old right now. So, and to be honest, I don't know what our angel share is on those. So we might not have an awful lot of product, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
And there's a few other things that we
I
can.
bet it's awesome.
I'll buy it.
Do a 12th anniversary and
2 bottles.
prove me right.
Through the post, and I'll get it. And Dave, okay.
What?
It's
I'm
legal.
here. I'm awake.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to tell you the tasting notes, just for one, that Davin and Blair had online. So I'm just going to read the tasting notes. It says, the whiskey's age polishes those familiar young grassy rye notes into warming spices and cloves. The barley malt shines brightest with creamy vanillas, barley sugar, chocolate-covered almonds, cocoa, and a splash of citrus. And I'm adding hockey bubblegum to it. Is there anything else, Barry, that you would add? Like when you were making it, what's the inspiration of it is my other question. But what did you want to make when you're doing it? Yeah.
Before he answers that, just a second, I just got to wipe the tear from my eye, because that was beautiful.
It was. Whoever wrote that is an artist Maximus.
For sure.
I don't know who would have written that. I don't know. That's good.
Yeah.
It's in the upper right-hand corner.
I'm waiting for that one day. That'd be good. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. We don't work backwards, so we don't say we're trying to blend to to get these notes on the final whiskey.
Okay.
We basically just play around with different blends, and it's a personal thing. Do we like it or not? Now, I don't have the formulation in front of me, so offhand I don't know, but there is a fair bit of malt in this blend.
And Davin was saying that it's quite malt forward. So
yeah. Less and less of our malt, and for that matter, rye, is being released as single cask offerings the way we originally did it. Most of it's going into our blends.
all right. And talking about blends, let's get a picture up here of a blend. Let's get right down here. Well, actually, no. Let's look at this one right here.
Ooh, that looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's look at one. All right. So going back to this was Stock and Barrel. This was you. We tried hard to create an affordable Canadian whiskey that had a profile more like a premium whiskey. Happy to know your tasters thought it was a hit mark. Cheers. So this is the blue label, and you have the red label. Can you tell me, before my next question, the difference between the blue and the red, please?
Other than the color.
Yes.
Color.
No, there's got to be more to it than that.
Yeah. So what we were trying to do was they were both introduced at the same time. So we basically wanted to hit two different price points in the market, and one price below $30, one price mid-30s. We wanted to make them different, yet familiar, that you would identify them as part of the same family.
So Barry, that price point thing, is that competing against the Canadian made whiskey owned by international distilleries?
Well, let's look at the picture. Look at that picture.
Yeah, so that under $30.
Well, special old, I don't know. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the market, and we really wanted to play in that. Now the challenge is margins are very, very small, so it's a volume play, and that was part of our challenge. Was we don't want to spend a lot of money. We're probably our costs are probably too high, just because we're small distillery. We can't keep our costs down. Yet the blue is doing really well in that under 30 market. The whiskeys in the blue and the red are the same whiskeys. It's just the proportions that are different. So
when I look at the tax structure in Ontario, $30 whiskey, that's not a lot of money in there.
It's not. No.
It's like beer. It's all a volume game.
Yeah. There's no question. And if we run a promotion, it's a loss leader.
Okay.
Wow.
Blair and Davin, can you talk to the difference between them, between the red and tasting note difference between the red and the blue, please?
I have both on my table in front of me, but I don't have either one in a glass, so no, I can't talk to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't talk to the. I remember the red being a bit more robust. I think the blue is something that is more of a mixer, like to make a highball or a cocktail, and the red is just as good as doing that. But I think if you're going to choose a sipper, the red probably wins out.
So Barry, is it more malt forward, the red?
Yeah, for sure. So same whiskeys. The rye, a little bit more rye in the red, a lot more malt. There's a touch of malt in the blue, but a lot more in the red.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, that the way you described it, Blair, was how we envisioned it when we released them, and that's sort of the way it played out over the first year or so. And we saw sales pretty much neck and neck. Over the last 6 months or so, something's happened. Blue sales are fantastic. Red softened a little, but blue seems to be the clear winner in the marketplace right now.
So is the other option a corn based then?
Yeah, they're both corn.
So they're all corn?
No, they're corn based with rye and malt.
So the base whiskey and the.
But so what you're saying is there's more malt in one than the other.
Yeah, more malt. Yeah, and the red has more malt.
And
so
more
then,
rye.
so then does the malt forward whiskey sell better than the other one?
No, not right now. And it may be.
Could we say that when you came out with both of them, maybe people saw them as complementary drinks, not one being a little bit higher than the other, but one just ended up they're thinking they should be on equal status, but one being cheaper just outsells the other.
It's possible.
Is that possible?
It's quite possible that is happening based on price alone.
Okay.
Yeah, but when it was first released, it was pretty clear that they really I think they positioned the blue as sort of, I don't want to say mixing whiskey, but they positioned the blue as a mixer, and the red was the one that you're going to sip on.
Yeah, but also at the same time, we found that on premise with licensees, they were gravitating towards the red for cocktails.
Okay. A higher level cocktail. That's good. That's nice.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
I'm going to ask you this as well. So, Barry, with this entry into the affordable whiskey range, so that's what you're trying. Are you trying to go beyond the craft? Are you trying to lose a little bit of the craft distiller market? Like, are you thinking you want to break into the top 10? Is that? Or you just want a bit of the market share? I want a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever be at that level. I mean, we don't have the resources to kick us up at that level. But at the same time, I don't think we want to. We don't necessarily want to be considered craft. We want to be considered as a good whiskey. I think a lot of consumers don't realize that we're as small as we are, which is great. You know, a lot of the people at the LCBO don't consider us craft or micro distilled.
And you know what? When we see you on the shelves here in Alberta, I didn't think we were kind of all that small of a distillery, because you always had 3 or 4 bottles on the shelf within us, and you had the same amount or more than, say, I don't want to compare right now, but when I saw you initially, before any of this started, before COVID, before our book club with Davin, before I was really looking, I was always buying the rye. So I bought the rye, and I think the first time was 5 years ago when I started comparing my ryes, and since then it's always been in it. But I always thought of you as a bigger distillery because of the bottles on the shelves, and I think you did a good job. And they were always there. We didn't think of you as a smaller micro distillery, but maybe we want to. I don't know what we want to do. Do we want to think of you as like that, or do we want to think of you as a bigger one? I don't know.
I'd like to be considered a good whiskey maker.
Regardless.
I think that there's too much baggage that comes with thinking about size.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, you sound like a female now. Size doesn't matter.
No.
I think,
Did I say that out loud?
Devin?
I think when a distillery has been around for as long as Still Waters has, I think that they're expected to do something new and to expand a little bit. And if they increase the breadth of their offerings, that's not abandoning being a micro distiller. It's just like, you know what, I've been here for 10 years. I got masses of barrels. I could probably use more space to keep all the barrels I'm making. And so, I have the inventory from which I can make a new whiskey, 3-barrel whiskey like that, or from which I can make, a blend like the blue blend. And I brought the wrong red blend downstairs. This one's not opened yet, and I'm not going to open it until the other one's finished. But I don't see the problem. One of the things when people are trying to sell whiskey is facings, getting facings in the liquor store. If you've got one bottle and they give you one rank in the store, one facing, people get in there, they see your bottle once. If you've got 5 different whiskeys, you've got 5 facings. And if they put them side by side, that's even better. And it creates this impression, which you, Dolph, have just talked about, where you did not realize that really Still Waters is still a micro distillery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I look at this like, if you get a facing in the store, why would the customer buy that when everything else around them is familiar? And that's why, I get so frustrated when I can't go in and talk to customers, like the end users. Yeah. Because if I put a sample in their cup, we do very well. If I don't put a sample in the cup, it goes back to the national brands.
Dave, you sell every bottle you make. Don't try to make me. This is the world's smallest violin playing "My Heart Bleeds for You." You sell every bottle you make.
But I'm looking at.
But Dave, you're interrupting me, and I'm interrupting you, and you're interrupting me, and I'm interrupting you, and I am going to win because you have a big brewery there, which you're turning up masses of beer. You're making lots of beer. and the whiskey is a side project, and you sell all the whiskey. I can understand your frustration in not being able to get into all the stores, but when we're talking about a distillery like Still Waters Distillery in Concord, Vaughan, Toronto, Ontario,
Yeah.
we're talking about a distillery that has been around from day one, that has masses of inventory, and that really can represent itself in more than one way. They are more than single malt, and they are more than rye.
But
you know, they have three blended whiskeys out there that really rate. And when to get back to your original point, when somebody walks into a store and sees, okay, one line of whatever Joe Blow's whiskey, they think that's cool, or they might not even think about it at all. But when they see 5 rows of Still Waters, or go to Benny's in Chicago and see 15 rows of Still Waters, they think this is something. These guys are successful. They have made their way. If I don't know what I want to buy, but I want to buy something I haven't had before, this whiskey is really up for consideration. And Dave, I was just making fun of you because my wife yells at me because I always interrupt people, and I'm full of shit and talk a lot. So.
I take a beating every night I'm on with you. So, and I'm good with that. But my point is that when I go into the liquor store, well, I'm looking for a whiskey, and they go, well, look at this. They never talk about Canadian. And that's the disappointing thing, is that they will default back to Scotch. They will default back to Wiser's. They will default back to Crown Royal. And us small guys get left behind.
You know what? I think that if the LCBO had its way, it would sell Smirnoff vodka and nothing else.
You bet. And they would sell Crown Royal, Glenfarclas, Glenlivet, Glenmorangie, Glen whoever, except for Glen Breton. But
we're changing that now. We are.
Their job is to generate money for the government. It is not their job to
look after the
provide
customers.
Good whiskey for consumers.
Oh, shit,
because
no.
they know that people are going to spend their money on whatever booze is on the shelf.
Well, if you walk
makes
into
me cry. I cry when I go into Kensington Wine Market and see that little store has more whiskey on its shelf today than LCBO will have in 600 stores this year. But then we're talking about two different things.
For me, because
it's a different market.
Every time I go there, I'm spending $700-800, and I come home to Laura, and I tell her before I go, I'm not going to spend that much. There's nothing.
I'm surprised you're still married.
She's a lovely person, and she's very understanding. But it's true. There's so much whiskey, and it's fantastic. Barry, do me a favor. Tell me why you picked the name Stock and Barrel. I've thought about this 10 times tonight, and I haven't asked you yet. Why Stock and Barrel? I know Still Waters now, but why Stock and Barrel?
You know, we when it came time to release our whiskeys, we worked with a local branding company, and it was just, you know, working with them. We developed that name. I mean, there's no there's no real magic behind it.
No, it's fun. But you could have made up anything you wanted to, and we would have all agreed and would have been happy. All right, we're good. By the way, I didn't say this. Kensington Wine Market's in Calgary. It's one of the most well-known liquor stores in Alberta. That's it, in case people didn't know out there. Barry, one last question for you, I think, is at the beginning you intended on being grained to glass. Are you still grained to glass?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything or just everything that's available in Ontario that you make, you buy from the Ontario market?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm sorry. Our barley,
yeah,
for the most part, is Alberta grown.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
There's very little barley grown in Ontario, and it took us years before we were able to source the barley that was grown and malted in Ontario. And when we did, it didn't work that well for us. So we went back to the Alberta malt.
Well,
did you buy it from Alec?
Was it the taste, or was it working with it that didn't work out?
It didn't. Yeah, it didn't give us the yields that made it economical.
Okay.
So are you buying from Alex? Alex, Alberta?
No,
Barry? No. Okay.
no.
There's only so many maltsters around, so
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and we're doing it through, because we don't. We're too small to mill on site. So we're buying it through our miller.
You already get a milled product?
Yeah,
Wow, that's like I couldn't imagine that.
yeah. It's a local miller. So he sources it. We know where it comes from, but he sources it for us.
So like that's the most interesting thing I've heard tonight is that you get it milled somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of people do.
Cool.
The whiskey that won Canadian Whiskey of the Year a few years ago was made with rye that they had bought already milled.
Yeah. In fact, interestingly enough, that rye came from the miller's own farm.
Oh, that's
Wow.
cool.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Gentlemen, it's an hour. We went through the hour again. So that
An
was
hour
really
and some.
listening to people argue back and forth. It always makes the time roll really fast. It's fantastic. We're going to do the same thing. Last words, Davin, Blair, Dave, and then we'll finish off with you, Barry. All you, Davin.
The Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries. It's your tour guide. If you want to be an armchair traveler, or if you want to visit all these distilleries, it tells you how to get there and what to expect when you see it. I'm Davin, Davindek, on Instagram and Twitter.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there we go. Buy the book, buy some Stillwater Spirit, and I think that's about all we have to say for tonight.
I'm done. Good job. Dave?
Hi. I got the book. I've got the whiskey. And I'm getting the education. This has been so much fun and so educational. I'm in the sales game, but this education has been priceless. So I'd like to thank Davin, I'd like to thank Blair, and all the distilleries that come on with us. Thanks, Dolph, for putting this show on. Thanks for letting me come on and take a beating again.
It's my pleasure, not for you to take the beating, but for being there. And thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate, and it was a lot of fun. Thanks, Dolph and Dave, and especially Davin and Blair. Highly recommend the Definitive Guide to Canadian Distilleries.
Thank you, kind sir. And as some bright guy said to me, we can promote this all we want, but it's until someone gets this in their hands and they see the pictures and they see the stuff going on that you get an idea of how good of a book it is. But not just that, how easy it would be as a guide. So I think if anyone has had it or you see a friend that's got it, just look through it and you'll see how much you'll like it right away and be happy with it. I am. This, gentlemen, and everyone else out there, has been a memorable episode, as every one of them have been. So I'd like to, and I still have a bit of my original. I'm really proud of that. It's doing very well. So, here's the good company. Here's the good whiskey. Here's the good cocktail. Here's the good books. Here's the good conversation. And here's to seeing you all at a new time next week. It's going to be an hour earlier. So 4 o'clock our time, 6 o'clock Ontario time. We're going to come back Saturday, August 29th, and our Whisky Book Club journey's continuing with the Distillerie Fils du Roi edition. They're page 261 in the book. I'll be 7 o'clock p.m. at
that book.
So that's it. I'm happy. Everything turned out great. I didn't have food poisoning. Nothing stopped this from happening tonight. I'm really happy that we had this experience together. Gentlemen, stick around. We'll talk a bit. And everyone else, thank you very much.